Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Understanding the Fundamentals of Lighting Design. As we continue Kitchen and Bath Month for October, I want to thank Mila for generously sponsoring this month's webinar series. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing John Casillas, Customer Learning Manager at Kichler. John, please take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is John Casillas, and I'm the Customer Learning Manager for Kichler Lighting. I'm really excited to be here today to present to you Understanding the Fundamentals of Lighting Design. As some of you may know, Kichler has been offering distinctive, beautiful, lighted, backed by award-winning craftsmanship's unparalleled quality and superior service since 1938. So we've been in business for 87 years, and we're really quite proud of that. One of the things that I want to talk about in this course is really kind of go over the learning objectives. So we all have a better understanding of what's going to be trained today. Number one, we're going to discuss the fundamentals of lighting design and the impact of lighting on the human eye. We're also going to explore different types of lighting needs based on aesthetics as well as health and well-being, and understanding the impact of lighting techniques on people's experience on any given space. And then finally, we're going to review the lighting fixture possibilities to create personalized living spaces for clients. But before we begin, I'd like to take a few minutes to go over some housekeeping items that are important. This course has been approved for a 1-hour credit, so you must stay in the entire duration of this presentation in order to receive credit. As you can see, this course is registered with the IDCEC, the ASID, the NARI, and NKBA. Light is an essential element that brings light to our surroundings. It shapes our perception of colors. It shapes our perception of textures and dimensions throughout all spaces. So in this course, you will gain insight into the fundamental principles of lighting design, along with some valuable tips, ideas, and concepts to truly transform any space as a professional. The fundamentals of lighting design encompasses several key principles and considerations that help create effective and aesthetic pleasing lighting in interior and architectural design. By incorporating these fundamentals into the lighting design process, you can create spaces that are not only well illuminated, but also visually appealing, functional, comfortable, and energy efficient. One of the things we're going to talk about first is luminous flux. Some of you may have heard of this and some of you may not. And don't worry, you'll have a better understanding of lumens by the end of this course, I promise. Luminous flux is a measurement and it's expressed in lumens, and it's the total amount of visible light emitted by a light source in all directions. Pretty simple, right? It qualifies the brightness of the light source as it's perceived by the human eye. So it's an important metric when comparing and specifically identifying lighting products because it directly indicates how bright the light source will appear to the human eye. And as some of you may know, we really don't pay attention anymore to the wattage of the bulb to measure the light source output of that bulb. While the number of watts indicates the amount of energy a bulb consumes, the number of lumens indicates the amount of light emissions. So simply put, the higher the wattage equals higher energy consumption, but a higher number of lumens equals more light. And that's what we really want to identify is how much lumens is actually going on to the space, not so much about how much energy the bulb is consuming. And LED, energy efficient bulbs, are becoming even more energy efficient as we speak today. They have a lower wattage than traditional bulbs, but emit just as much light or even more. Because of this, we should all really try to compare bulbs based on the number of lumens and not on the wattage. So as you see on your screen, a 20-watt incandescent bulb emits about 230 to 270 lumens. And then as you can see on 40 watts emits about 440 to 460, and 60 emits about 800 to 850 lumens. The chart on this one truly visualizes this idea with LEDs having the lowest wattage per lumen output compared to other light bulbs widely used now and in the past. So as I previously mentioned, and as you may remember, a 20-watt incandescent bulb produces about 230 to 270 lumens. But if you notice on the screen, a 4-watt LED bulb emits the same amount of light, if not more, and also uses less energy, which is really important to any consumer. Now, the photometric report. I don't know how many of you have used the photometric report, but it really has a lot of great information. But at the same time, it really can be overwhelming. The report shows how the light from fixtures fills a specific space. It allows you to visualize the finished space so that the perfect amount of light is specified during the design process. This report basically confirms luminosity, strength, light evenness, and a lot more. The In addition to all of that, the report also reveals the maximum and minimum foot candles, and we're going to talk about that a little later on, and the number of light fixtures and fixture locations and directions. So again, it has a really good information that is very helpful to all of us. But what I really want you to walk away from this screen is three elements, and they're in the middle of the screen. And they are the color rendering index, better known as CRI, the Kelvin temperature, and the delivered efficacy located, as I mentioned, right in the center of the report. So you may want to write this down or maybe do a screenshot, but the minimum, the absolute minimum CRI or color rendering index you ever want to purchase for yourself or for your clients needs to be 90 or above. And you may ask yourself, well, why is that so important? Well, because at 90, that light source begins to pick up the color red. And anything less than 90 does not pick up the color red. So now you may ask, well, why is red so important? Well, there's a lot of red in our lives that, as you may know, it's in our skin, it's in our furniture, it's in our clothing. So let's take this for an example. If you had a bulb that had a CRI of 60 or less in your closet, that red sweater may not look as red as you think. It actually may look a little brown with not the right CRI. So that's why CRI is so important, that it really brings out the redness in a lot of our products that we have in our home, in our offices, and our businesses. The second thing I want to talk about is the Kelvin temperature. When I work with clients, I always suggest a light source of a Kelvin temperature of 2,700 to 3,000. This really allows the room to be inviting, welcoming, cozy. There's a few exceptions, and one of that exception is the garage. So in the garage, I usually select a light source that has a Kelvin temperature of about 3,500. That's because that's a brighter area. We need more light there. Anything above 4,000 is primarily used in retail locations, hospitals. So it's really designed more for commercial bit. The last thing I want to talk about, as I mentioned here, is the delivered efficacy, which should be about 55 or above. And so you may say, why is this important? Well, it basically indicates the published lumens of a bulb should emit is actually doing it. So if a bulb is in to emit about 270 lumens and it has a deliver efficacy of 55 or better, then the bulb is actually emitting close to 270 lumens, just as it's promised. But anything below 55, it may not. So again, those are the three elements that I really want you to focus on whenever you request a photometric report. It's the CRI, the Kelvin temperature, and the delivered efficacy. Now we're going to talk a little bit about luminance. Very simply put, luminance is how an observer perceives the brightness or luminous intensity of an illuminated space. It basically quantifies the amount of light emitted, reflected, or transmitted from a surface to a particular direction per area or per space. Now, there's a few things that affect how someone perceives light. Okay. Part of that may be the composition of the surface. Is it granite? Is it wood? What are the type of composition is that surface? That also affects the luminance of the light. How much natural light is coming into that space also will affect the luminance. And also our age. As we all age, we will need more light. And that's just a given when we're working with our clients. So we need to understand their age and how much light they may need in a particular area. Now we're going on to illuminance is how much light you're throwing onto a space. Okay. So remember that. Illuminance is how much light you're throwing onto a space, which is different than luminance, which is how much your eye perceives in the light. So luminous is how much you perceive the light. Illuminance is how much you're throwing light onto the space. So I talked a little bit about foot candles earlier, so we're going to talk about them now. And this is a good time for you to get a piece of paper, a pen, or perhaps take a photo shot of this screen. These are recommended illuminance levels for various areas in your home. Okay. So, for example, bathrooms should have about 70 to 80 foot candles. Kitchen and dining should probably have about 30 to 40. Living room about 10 to 20, and the hallway about 5 to 10. Okay. So take those into consideration. So I'm going to do a quick exercise with you so that you can kind of work with your clients going forward. Now, I have to admit, I'm not that great at math. So bear with me as I try to make this exercise as simple as possible, not only for you, but also for me. So I'm just going to take, for example, let's say you have a dining room that's 12 by 12, 12 inches long, 12 inches deep. Okay. So if you want to figure out the square footage of that space, you would do 12 times 12, and that would be 144 square feet of space. Okay. Now, if you take, and we know this is a dining room, if you take the 144 times the 40 foot candles, as you can see on your screen, for a dining room, that means you would need 5,760 lumens to fill that space. Now, I know that might have been a little tricky, so I want to make sure we go over this again because this is a really good exercise for everybody to have. Again, if you have a 12 by 12 dining room, that's 144 square foot. And a dining room requires 30 to 40 foot candles. So you times that 144 times 40, that gives you your lumens, which is 5,760. Now, this is based on an average ceiling height of about 8 to 10 inches. 8 to 10 feet. If it's more than that, then obviously it may change just slightly with that. But this is a good thing to know as far as your foot candles. These are recommended, so you can go a little up or down. If you notice, I used 40 versus 30 only because in all spaces that I design for my clients, I always put a dimmer. So if 40 was too much, I can always dim it down with a dimmer or a dimmer control. Let's talk about color temperatures. Okay. So on the color temperature, this is the characteristics of light sources that qualifies the color appearance of the light they emit. So in this case, the Kelvin scale really has three kind of settings per se. You can have warm light, which is around 2,700 to 3,000. You can also have neutral light, which is 3,500 to 4,000. And you can have a cool light, which is about 5,000 lights, which creates a more of a cool bluish tint. And you can also see that if we go up to 6,500, how that changed the overall look of that room with a very bright kind of a bluish tint associated with that. Here is a good example going back and talking about the color rendering index. So if you can see here, you have a CRI of 100, and look at the color of the apple in that space. That really looks like a bright red apple. But if you had a bulb that had a CRI of 50, can you see the difference between that? And as I mentioned, there's a lot of red in our homes. And so this is why having a CRI of 90 or above is essential to any living space to really replicate the true colors of that room and all the designs that are going on in that room. Now let's talk about LED bending. So LED components are sorted according to quality criteria in the process of LED bending. The simple thing to remember here is the less steps, the better the quality and better light source that you have. So on your screen, you see three-step bending, and the light source is consistent and provides great quality because all the lights are beaming downward with the right temperature of light, and they're all a clear kind of white light. But if you look at the five-step bending, you don't see the consistency in the light. Some of them look a little yellow, some look a little white, some even had a little bit of a red tint to it, and so forth. So when you purchase a bulb, you'll always want to pick the bulb that has the fewer steps because the fewer steps means better quality and better light consistency across the board. So let's talk about designing for clients. Okay. We've gone over the fundamentals of lighting. So now we can move over to the application. This will depend on the requirements and lifestyles of your clients, without a doubt. So, as you know, certain details can be customized to cater to their exact needs, but creating more functionality and aesthetically pleasing spaces is always going to be easier for you and easier for your clients as well. People use their homes differently depending on their needs and circumstances. Taking the time to understand how the space will be used will allow your lighting design to cater to the daily activities of the user. So, for example, does your client work from home and need a designated area with a good lighting for online calls? Maybe that's a yes, maybe that's a no. Or maybe your client loves to host and needs to create a dining room with the perfect lighting ambiance. So, with that said, consider the activities that will take place in the area, whether it's a work environment, a living room, a kitchen, or perhaps even in a commercial base in an art gallery. So consider all of that as well. And of course, speaking of ambience, there's also just one way, there's not only just one way to set a mood in the home, there's several. And a lot of it has to do with lighting. So depending on the user and or their rent, there are different lighting aesthetics that can impact the mood created in the home. Some intentional moods can be set with the right lighting conditions. So, like for example, you see in the photo there, romantic. You can create a soft, muted light that seems to emanate within. And you can control that with dimmers across the board. Now you have the also on the other side, you have the focus and intent, which is really directional lighting surrounded by dark spaces that focuses your eyes on important things. So it uses more focus, more direct light, such as under cabinet lighting, as you can see on the screen. And of course, we have a few more. You can create a calming, warm tones lights that decompresses the mind and basically calms the nerves. You can have it energetic with a bright light that floods the entire space. Or you can have a very natural, which mimics natural light using sconces or tape lighting. These are all great examples of the different types of lighting that you can create just with dimmers or the right lighting. Natural light. Okay. Natural sunlight can brighten up and bring light to any environment. Not only does it really truly bolster productivity in work environments, but it also exerts a profound positive influence on our overall health and well being. Remember, natural light is the best source of light in any space. So let's talk a little bit of how light affects our health. So, natural light regulates our circadian rhythms, or better known as our internal body clock. And that body clock influences our sleep, wake cycles, our hormone production, and many other changes in our body. Exposure to natural light during the day and reduce exposure to artificial light at night truly helps to maintain a healthy circadian rhythm. Disruption in these rhythms can really lead to some strong disorders such as sleep, mood disturbances, and even maybe some health issues as well. Adequate lighting in work environments is crucial for productivity and alertness. Research has shown that Poorly lit spaces can lead to eye strain. They can also lead to reduced concentration and decreased productivity. So think about it. For most of us, when we go outside to enjoy the sun, it usually puts a smile on our face. And so imagine that also going into a room that has a lot of natural light. Sometimes that brings some happiness to us, some enjoyment to our lives, just to having the right natural light come into the space. Another thing to consider is the adequate lighting for our aging population. Older individuals often require more light for visibility and safety, and good lighting can reduce the risk of falls and injuries, which is really important. Lighting has a multifaceted impact on human health, affecting our sleep, I should say, our moods, our productivity, our physical health, and overall well being. Carefully design lighting solutions that consider the quality of light and its timing can help create environments that support and promote human health. So let's talk a little bit about human centric lighting. Although nothing, as I mentioned to you, beats natural light. Natural light is the best. But technology has evolved enough that artificial light can be used to mimic and basically stimulate the qualities of natural light. And human centric lighting takes into account the biological responses to light and takes into consideration illumination, human health, human productivity, and energy efficiency. So, as you can see, light really impacts not only the beauty of our home, but it truly impacts our well being and how we work and how we live. Tuning light, having the ability to tune a lighting system to match the intensity of natural light is always best for human centric lighting. This could be done with the light fixtures operating on dimmers, as I mentioned. That's why dimmers are so important because they're so universal and adjustable. Let's talk a little bit about glare. Nobody likes glare. Definitely, I do not. And you'll want to design a lighting plan that avoids the pain of glare. So let me see if I can try to help you to eliminate what are some ways that we can try to eliminate some of the glares. And some of them are pretty self-explanatory, but let me kind of walk you through some of this. Window treatments can obviously reduce some of the glare in the room, especially during the day. Lampshades. Sometimes you may have a chandelier that has exposed bulb, but sometimes if it's feasible, you can kind of put like a mini lampshade on some of those. Dimmable lights allows the light levels to adjust as needed. So having a light that's dimmable is very important. You can also add more task lighting. Could also help the overall light levels throughout the space and reduce some of the glare. Indirect lighting source like coves, lighting them off softly can also reduce some of those glare. Evenly distributed light fixtures throughout the space can eliminate some glare. And place and install fixtures so the light is not in the direct line of your sight can also reduce glare. So that's just some examples that you may want to take in consideration to reduce some glare. Some of the things to consider when you're working with your clients is to ask some basic questions. So some of those questions may be, what is the intent of the light in that space? What is the feel and look of that space? And what are they trying to achieve? What space or room are you designing for? What type of lighting do you prefer? What colors are you working with in that room? So if you have a dark wall, an accent wall that has a dark green, you may want to know that so that you know the right type of fixture to put in that space. The other things you want to know is how do they plan to live in a particular space? So if they have children, where do the children do the homework? If they have a hobby, is it reading? Is it knitting? And if so, where do they do that so that you can put some task lighting? Are they working from their office space? If so, that you're going to want to do some task lighting there or a table lamp to accent that area for tasks. So those are just some of the questions you may want to consider when working with your customers. So lighting techniques. So when it comes to creating lighting plans, there's some basic lighting rules. There is light layering, light distribution, and light direction. So repeat, light layering, light distribution, and light direction. So light layering is a technique that uses different sources of light. That includes ambient, task, and accent. Okay. Each layer serves a different purpose and should be carefully balanced to meet functional and aesthetic needs. So let's kind of talk a little bit about ambient lighting. Okay. So ambient lighting is lighting that has it really is the foundation for the rest of your lighting plan. Lighting fixtures for this layer are designed to distribute light uniformly in all directions, ensuring that no area is significantly brighter or even darker than the rest of the room. Okay. This general diffused light creates really a comfortable and well lit environment that reduces contrast and supports basic visibility and orientation within a room. The next is task lighting. So this is probably one of the most overlooked type of lightings in the home. But this layer of lighting is concentrates more on the routine tasks that occurs in the home, such as like homework, cooking, putting on your makeup, brushing your teeth. All of those are tasks that we do sometimes on a daily basis. So we need to have the right type of lighting to kind of support those tasks. That's why task lighting is often under or over cabinets or over mirrors. So you also just have to strategically place them, and you can use some down lights or recessed lighting to kind of help overall with the task lighting. Now we go on to accent. So with accent lighting, this is where things really become fun. This is really the decorative layer of the light. So this is where you get to show off some of your favorite things and makes a design statement. It can be used really to complement a room, furnishings and things like sculptures, maybe plants, maybe books, even a beautiful piece of artwork as you see on your screen. This is all part of the accent lighting. So let's talk a little bit about grazing and washing and backlighting. So on grazing, this casts a light on a wall and it uses a narrow angle that highlights the wall. This is great when you're trying to showcase maybe something that has texture, such as brick, a stone, or any other natural element. It can be used indoors and outdoors, like indoors if you want to highlight your kitchen backsplash, if it has some type of texture. Wall washing is a little different. Wall washing uses a wider angle and allows it to highlight more things at the same time, such as the art, collectibles, or plants that you may have in your commercial business or even in your residential home. And last but not least, there's backlighting. Backlighting uses LED tape and puck lighting, as you can see in this demonstration here, to light up any particular space for interior feature. This could include also decorative wall, furniture, TVs, and a lot more. There are 3 types of light direction, and we're going to focus on each one independently. First, let's talk about direct light. Direct light is when the light source directly shines onto a specific area or object with little diffusion or reflection. Most of the time, direct lighting will be pointed downward, so as you see on your screen. Let's think about a direct lighting application. It's perfect for task lighting, like under cabinet lighting in the kitchen or overhead spotlights that provide focus lighting for reading and working. So the first one is direct lighting. The second one is going to be omnidirectional lighting. So this is semi-directional lighting. It's somewhat similar to direct lighting, but a portion of the light is also directed upwards. And you can see that in this example on your screen. And it provides a reflection, perhaps up to the ceiling, perhaps up to the wall, rather than shining directly on an area or object to be illuminated. The primary goal really around this is to create a more evenly distributed light and really reduce harsh shadows in doing that. The last one is indirect lighting. There's really not much to say about this other than it's a great source of lighting when you're trying to conceal or shield in a way that eliminates light into a direct space. So if you can see here, the light is going upward, but it's producing light into the space. So that's more of what we call indirect lighting. So using these light techniques that we just kind of went over can completely change the feeling a room emits. Not only can it light up a room and highlight different objects, it can enhance the look of colors and textures or even create visual illusions. There are different fixtures and areas that we need to consider. So let's kind of take a look at that. So on the light fixtures, there's different ones that we can consider. One is the chandelier. Chandeliers really are like jewelry for the room. They are hung from the ceilings and act like really a showstopper decorative element that also provides general and ambient lighting for a room. They're typically hung over dining tables or entryways to define the space. The other ones, which is some of my favorites, is the pendants. Pendants are similar to chandeliers, but typically are smaller. They can provide task lighting or ambient lighting, and pendants can be used as a decorative element and are perfect for smaller areas like some kitchens. The other ones are sconces. Sconces are usually, I should say, wall mounted light fixtures that can be used to accompany the design aesthetic of a space. Okay. The other is lamps, floor lamps, table lamps, and desk lamps, kind of a variety of sizes and shapes and colors. And they really do a beautiful job in providing more light into the space. And finally, there's recessed lighting and LED tapes and puck lighting. So recessed lighting is built into the ceiling and is typically flush with the ceiling. They provide great ambient lighting, and due to the concealed nature of the light, it preserves the openness of a space without sacrificing a good source of light in areas all over the house, from kitchen to the bedroom. And then, as you can see here in the screen, there's also LED tapes and puck lighting. Tapes and pucks are great for literally any area, truly any area, especially for hard to reach spaces. So it creates a great look into any space by using LED tape or puck. Okay. So let's talk about a little bit about some light areas. We're going to focus first on living rooms. So living rooms are where people gather with family and friends. And so ambient lighting really creates a great overall space for people to gather and great overall visibility. So add extra lighting or I should say, add the extra lighting within nooks or under cabinets to add accent lighting, and that creates a truly calming feel. But you also have dining room. The dining room table light is the centerpiece of the room. So picking the perfect light fixture, whether it's a linear chandelier, perhaps a pendant cluster, will make a huge impact. Also consider how the dining room will be used past entertaining. So will that space be used for working, for crafting, etc., so that those lighting options can be available as you create the design for your clients. We can't forget the kitchen, right? The kitchen is usually the hub of the home. It's where you cook. It's where you eat. It's where you entertain. Perhaps it's where you relax. Maybe you work and do some activity of a different nature. Functional lighting is the key, but you also want lighting fixtures to provide beautiful light that sets the right mood. So with that said, combine multiple lighting fixtures to make the most out of the space is really, really important. Consider layering recessed lighting for ambient lighting, pendant lighting or lighting clusters over the island, and sconces near windows or sinks for task lighting. That creates the overall best illusion when you have so many different layers of lighting, and kitchen is one of the best places to do layers of lighting. You also have hallways, and hallways are very important. I typically use sconces and recessed lighting to light the way and to highlight any other decorative fixtures that you may have, like a mirror or a painting that you want to kind of show off a little bit in that space. Then we have bathrooms and bedrooms. So bathrooms are another area with lots of activity. I typically, like I said, I use sconces to provide light on either side or above the vanity mirror. That's typically what I use. And in bedrooms, the bedrooms are a place really, as we all know, to kind of get away and to relax. So I usually use ambient lighting with a ceiling fan that has a light kit, or I might create a softer mood before going to bed by adding sconces or other pendants next to the nightstands. That also creates a very nice design and comfort look in the bedroom. And of course, we can't forget about outside because the outside is just an extension of our home. There are so many lighting opportunities to consider. So between outdoor kitchens, different entertainment zones, front porches, pathways, those are all areas that we need to consider as potential for light. So outdoor and ceiling fans cool down the patio while providing light over a dining space. Sconces on either side of the doorway also lights the entrance. You can add LED lighting in stairs or steps for directional lighting. You can also extend this pathway lighting with post lights, which are very common in a lot of homes. The other thing to consider is bulb options and requirements. Energy efficient is another thing that should always be considered in your lighting plan. That includes specifically things like Energy Star LED light bulbs. Not only are LEDs more efficient, but they're also long lasting than any other light bulb in the market currently. They currently have a lifespan of over 20,000 hours. This longer lifespan will help, obviously, your clients save money. And who doesn't want to save money at these times? All right. So I want to go over a little bit about the objectives that we first introduced you to. So we discussed the fundamentals of lighting design and the impact of lighting on the human eye. We also explored different types of lighting needs based on the aesthetics as well as health and well-being. We understand the impact of learning techniques on people's experience on any given space, and we review the lighting fixture possibilities to create personalized living space for clients. So this now takes us to the end of this CEU course called Understanding the Fundamentals of Lighting Design by Kitster. I hope you found the materials interesting and educational for you. So now we're ready to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you to John for his informative presentation on light fundamentals today. We do have a few questions from our audience, so let's dive right in. John, our first question for you is from Bernice. What is your recommendation to light a tiny house that's 12 by 20, and should the same foot candle be used on the whole space?
Perfect. All right. My camera's not working for some reason. I apologize. So, hey, great question on those tiny houses. You could use the same overall, but my recommendation on such a small space, which is really consisting of many multi-rooms in one area, is to use basically between 10 to 30 foot candles in that given space. You may want to use a little bit more in the bathroom area, but overall, I would recommend about a 10 to 30 foot candle in that particular space for a tiny house.
Thank you. Moving on to our next question. You mentioned utilizing the photometrics report earlier in your presentation. Could you explain how to determine whether the CRI or the color rendering index is 90 or above and how we can access this resource?
Perfect. There we go. Hopefully my camera is working now. Great question. So yes, so that photometric report, whoever asked that question, good for you. You're going to get so well educated around that photometric report. Wherever you buy your light source today from that manufacturer, you can request that photometric report. It's on the box and maybe inside the box. Some actually list it on the packaging and may say the CRI on the outside without getting the photometric report, but most of them require you just to kind of download, and it's free, the photometric report for that particular bulb from that particular manufacturer.
Awesome. Thank you for that insight. Elaine is wondering, what is the CRI rating for bright sunlight, specifically as it relates to fabrics in exterior areas?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question again?
Yeah, what is the CRI rating for bright sunlight, specifically as it relates to fabrics in the exterior areas?
Ooh, that's a great question. we still would want it to be the same as far as like 90, because there's just, if you could just kind of see the spectrum. But on the exterior, that is a great question. I'll have to determine exactly what would be the correct CRI with that. So we may need to get back to you on that one.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can follow up through email. So, all right. Moving on to our next question, John. Nate is wondering, you mentioned 5,700 for the dining room example earlier for lumens. Does that mean literally having X number of bulbs in that room where the lumens add up to that number?
That's exactly right. So you may have a pendant above a particular area. You may have some sconces. You may have some ambient light. All of those fixtures combined, which should equal around 5,700. And I do want to stress that those foot candles that we indicated are simply guidelines. So, if you're over or under some of those numbers, you're going to be fine. But they are a cumulative number of light source that you're bringing into that room, that they equal the number of lumens as outlined.
Thank you. I see we have a few audience responses saying that the sunlight is CRI 100.
Well, that makes sense because it's a natural light.
Okay, moving on to our next question. How can designers strategically use materials, finishes, and color palettes to enhance the perception of natural light in a space? As I know you mentioned that that was one of the most priority things you should be considering.
Yeah, so when you have natural light come in, it's always best if you can obviously use lighter color textures in your room in regards to the fabric, in regards to the wood finishes, in regards to your wood floors and so forth. That's really how you can enhance some of the natural beauty of the light. And then you can bring even more color into that space through pillows, through lampshades, through the rugs and so forth. But whenever you can choose some neutral colors, that will overall enhance that space.
John, before we end today, do you have any final thoughts for our audience? Any extra insight you'd like to provide?
Yes. So for those of you that maybe travel to Dallas, we welcome you to come to our Kitchener Experience Center. We're located in the Design District. We would love to come have you join us and we walk you through the showroom to get a better idea of what our fixtures look like. For those of you that live in the Dallas area, we hope that you can make a stop. We're by appointment, so please reach out to us. We would welcome you to come and take a look at some of our products.
We do have one last minute question come in. Rachel is wondering if someone does not like recessed lighting and wants to use surface mount lights instead, do you recommend having more surface lights than recessed lights?
Oh, wow. So recessed lighting, there's a whole trick to this in itself. Recessed lighting, probably overall, I would probably recommend recessed lighting, but it has a lot to do with the placement of those recessed lightings. If you go to any home, usually the recessed lighting is in a grid pattern. So if you go to a kitchen or you go to a living room, they're basically all symmetrical and so forth. Sometimes that's not always the best. Sometimes it may be, but sometimes it's not always the best. So to answer your question directly, I prefer the recessed lighting more so, but it also has a lot to do with the placement of where you put those recessed lighting. It's a fine art to determine that, because I usually start from the walls inward. I start with my walls and decorate that, and I move inward into the living space.
Wonderful. Appreciate that last minute response. If there are any extra questions, feel free to type it in through the Q&A option at the bottom of your screen. But we want to thank John for sharing his expertise with us, Mila for generously sponsoring this month's webinar series, and a huge thank you to our wonderful audience for attending today's session. Until next time, which is tomorrow, I hope to see everyone and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Great.
Everyone.
Thanks, everybody.